Welcome to all our viewers. I'm Chico Garcia.
And I'm Gino Killiamore.
And with us this morning, straight from LA, is international hair and scalp expert, Svenson's chief trichologist, Michael Bernstein. So, good morning, Mr. Bernstein, and glad to have you on the show.
Good to be here. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody.
Okay, so Mr. Bernstein, here's the thing. A lot of people have approached us, over the past few months, basically asking about our anti-hair loss treatments at Svenson. And, we explain how the treatments work, but we also advise them that they should obviously consult a qualified trichologist for correct diagnosis and treatment. Since our consultation at Svenson, we've learned a lot of things like early prevention and hair scalp care are really, really important no matter what your age is, whether you're as young as I am or as old as Chico is, it doesn't really matter. No offense.
I will ignore that statement. So yes, Mr. Bernstein?
I mean, is it really that important to, have it diagnosed early and, basically go into preventive maintenance?
Of course it is. Think about it. Why wait until you lose your hair to do anything about it?
That is true.
Let's face it, you don't go to the dentist when your teeth fall out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You go to the dentist when you have nice teeth, and they realize the reason that you lose your teeth is because the bacteria, the tartar, and the plaque that builds up. And now, people are very fortunate. We now know the reason that you lose your hair is the fact that the build-up of testosterone, etc. And so, at Svenson, we can take the necessary steps to prevent you losing your hair, the same way as we work in dentistry.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just, I just find it crazy that, even people in their 20s, early 20s even, and it just sort of like shocks you when you find out, like when I went there, I'm in my late 20s, and then I went to Svenson, and, I thought to myself that, this is something I don't really need. I've got a, thick head of hair. And then, when they eventually checked out my hair, then I found out that there was something wrong. And, if I hadn't gone to Svenson at all, then, maybe years down the line, I would have been...
Not so many years down the line.
Not so many years down the line.
No,
even.
because it's what people don't realize, that hair loss is predominantly a young man's problem.
Right.
Because hair loss begins directly after puberty when it's when the male hormone testosterone kicks in. Right. Because one of the main factors of hair loss is testosterone, but it's not testosterone on its own, because then every guy will be bald.
Right.
It's actually the interaction of an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase, which you produce in your prostate gland. This combines with the testosterone to form a very potent anti-androgen called dihydrotestosterone, or DHT for short, which is easier. And it's what tends to happen is that in this area of the scalp, not at the sides and not at the back, but the scalp is very sensitive to the DHT.
Yeah.
And the DHT binds to the genetic receptor sites and gives the signal to just gradually slow down the hair growth cycle. That's why you don't just wake up one day and you're bald. It's very, it's like, you didn't notice.
Yeah.
It's a gradual thinning, and it gets worse and worse. But unfortunately, with males particularly, once you have lost the hair, you cannot get it back.
Okay, so testosterone plays such a big part, so that sort of dooms us males altogether, because if testosterone is like one of the causes, and we all have testosterone,
thank God we do.
then that means like we're all predisposed.
Exactly, but we can take the necessary steps because, again, like dentistry, we know what causes it. So we now have certain treatments such as DHT inhibitors, which tries to block the DHT from building up. We then have other treatments that will coat the genetic receptor sites so the DHT doesn't bind to them.
Yeah.
Right. Is it just a genetic thing? I mean, because like a lot of guys I've asked before, most of them will be like, oh, but it doesn't run in my family, so it probably won't happen to me. And then a lot of the people, you know, whose dads or whose grandfathers have it, they go like, oh, my parents are bald. I mean, my dad is bald, or my grandfather is bald. I mean, will it happen to them also? I mean,
it's very possible because, you know, it's called androgenetic alopecia, or male pattern baldness. So it's very dependent upon your genes.
Right.
But that doesn't mean to say you have to give in to it.
Right.
Yeah, let's spin this thing on its head. Let's just say your father has a heart problem, your grandfather has a heart problem. It runs in the family.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't just wait and say, I'm going to have a heart attack.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
true.
I don't think you'll find anyone waiting around.
You're
to say
going
that.
to take anti-cholesterol. You're going to watch your diet. You're going to slim down. You're going to exercise.
Working out.
You're going to do everything you can to prevent that. Now, that's not a guarantee you won't lose. You know, you won't have a heart attack. It's the same way with hair. That we have anti-DHT, we have stimulators, we have boosters, we have amino acids, we have vitamins. Everything essential to the hair growth.
Yeah.
And providing you haven't lost the hair and you've still got a root that's active, we can try and prevent you from losing your hair. And in doing so, your hair will stay in your hair longer. And instead of just being those thin, pathetic little hairs, they gradually mature and get thicker.
Into the normal, you know.
Exactly.
So, you know, like with prevention, you know, time has a lot to do with it. So I guess what you're trying to say is that you have to act on it right away. I mean, don't drag your feet and wait until everybody notices the hair loss. The moment you start seeing the beginning of the problem, it's to act on it right away.
I agree entirely. And, you know, even if you don't think you have a problem, you really want your hair to look good.
Of course.
You want to
Of
feel
course.
good. It gives you self-confidence.
Right.
It builds up your self-esteem. It's very important to look after your hair.
And it's not something that you want to stress about. And, you know, speaking of stress, actually, I heard somewhere that stress actually causes hair loss. Is there any truth in this?
There is actually, because if you think about it, stress comes from your adrenal glands. You know, because when you're stressed, you produce adrenaline.
Right.
You know, it's the fight or fright drug.
Yes.
And strange enough that we produce testosterone in our adrenal glands. So the more adrenaline you have, the more testosterone, and you can become prone to hair loss. This is even more so with females.
Right. So if you're like, let's just say you're an adrenaline junkie and you're into like, you know, extreme sports or something like that, is that also like is that a factor? I mean, does that...
It's difficult to say it would necessarily be a factor. It could be.
Right.
You know, but it's all down again, if you're genetically inclined to lose your hair, then you have to take steps to prevent it. And you can usually tell by looking at your dad, looking at your granddad, looking at your uncles, and you can see the pattern forming itself.
What about dandruff? You know, does it play a role in hair loss? Is it a precursor? Is it a symptom? I mean, what role does it play in hair loss?
Let's not stop with just dandruff. Like, let's just say you have a really oily scalp or something like that.
They're two very interesting questions, because dandruff on its own doesn't cause hair loss.
Okay.
You know, but there are different forms of dandruff. You know, you have just the normal dandruff, which is the flaking off of the dead skin cells.
Yeah.
You then move further up to a more severe form of dandruff, where you actually get the presence of a yeast sporum. And it's the yeast sporum that you get bacteria building up, which can cause problems.
Yes.
So even though it's not a cause, it does add to the problem. And the fact that when you've got a dandruff, you start scratching your head, and you've got dirty fingernails, and this can cause problems there. Now, funny enough, greasy hair is often, you forget that also you have dandruff with greasy hair.
Yeah.
Right.
And the problem is, instead of the flakes falling off, they stick
sort of
together,
sticks
they
together.
build
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And you'll see some guys who've got a redness around their forehead.
Right.
And it's exacerbated when they are stressed.
Oh,
And that is seborrheic dermatitis.
right.
And also, wherever you have sebum, it's been noted that you get more of the presence of testosterone, because if you notice, men have much oilier skins than females.
Yes.
You know, they
We've
have the-
noticed.
You've got the powdery nice
Yeah.
face, and you know, you've got
But-
shine
but-
all over your face.
That's right. But the thing is, with females who've got this lovely soft porcelain skin, as they age, they get wrinkles.
Right.
Whereas guys who have all this oil coming through, we stay better, you know,
Right.
leather-like. But as I said, all these things are a precursor to the hair loss.
Mm-hmm.
And if you notice you've got dandruff and you notice you've got a greasy scalp, and even the other section to dandruff going further is when you get those thick, very dense masses, which is actually a psoriasis, which is even more serious.
Okay.
You need to see somebody who knows how to diagnose it instead of just saying, oh, you've got dandruff.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
you want to go further. And at Svenson, we have a special corrective program which deep cleanses the scalp, removes all these impurities, and provides the correct environment for those healthy hairs to grow.
All right.
So I guess, you know, there are a lot of reasons why men and women suffer from hair loss. But I guess what the whole point is to make sure that you have something to prevent it. You know, it's one thing to try to reverse the damage, and it's another to try and prevent it from further escalating. So I guess what we're trying to say is that, you know, you should have like a Svenson preventive program, which makes sure that you don't get to the point where it becomes irreversible.
That's so true, and it's exactly the way we think at Svenson. You know, our mantra is prevention is better than cure.
Exactly.
Right, because once you go bald, you can never grow hair back.
Unfortunately, whatever you read about, you know, we can regrow hair on bald heads, it's not true, not at this moment in time. And at Svenson, we do advise people that we do not grow hair on bald heads, but we can prevent you from losing the hair you already have. And in doing so, by retaining the hair for a longer period, it automatically will start to mature and get stronger.
Right. So there you go. You know, that's good news for all the people out there listening who might be suffering from some sort of level of hair loss. And hair loss is preventable. That's the good news. And the first step in early prevention is to see a qualified trichologist at Svenson to have your hair and scalp checked. And they offer free consultations, so what are you guys waiting for? Just call 892-4247, remember that number, and schedule your appointment today. So thank you very much, Mr. Michael Bernstein, for joining us this morning and for enlightening us on what to do when you're starting to suffer from hair loss.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, guys.